How often do you find yourself hovering over previous bars and trying to look up in that top left corner there at the very small numbers to decipher what was yesterday's close or what was this recent low value down here? Or better yet, how many of you get into an intraday chart and start drawing key levels like this, and then your chart ends up looking something like this, or if I pop back out to the daily, something like this, which becomes pretty much impossible to read? Well, I have coded a custom study that is showing you those labels you're seeing up in the top left hand of this chart now. This makes these price action values much easier to read. And it's not only the open, close, high, and low. There is also percent change values. There is highest high and lowest low values out of the X number of bars back. It's an extremely customizable code, once again, that will help you be able to analyze charts much, much faster. And the faster you can analyze charts, the more trade opportunities you can find. And in today's video, we are going to build this study together step by step. So stick around to the end and you can have all these exact same labels on your chart. Luckily for us, there is a stored function within ThinkorSwim for labels. This means we don't need to build out the functionality for creating a label for every single code that we build. All we need to do is simply reference the name of this function and make use of the 4 input parameters that it accepts. That being a visible, text, color, and location. So let's go ahead and hop into our edit studies modal from our chart here and click on create, which will begin to build out a new study. From here, we can actually just get rid of this demo line of code and we can go ahead and build our first label. So remember, all we need to do is call in that add label function. The name of it is what the title of the help page was, add label. And whenever you call a function, you need to do open and close parentheses so that the machine recognizes that it's a function and is ready to accept the parameters within that parentheses. And with every single line of code, you need to end it with a semicolon. Now, you still see an error here because add label does not come with default parameters. We need to get inside of these parentheses and actually begin to set the input parameters that we covered just a second ago. So the first label we'll add to this study is the opening price of the current candle. The first parameter of the add label function is visible. Basically, what must be true in order for this label to show on the charts. For this type of study, I want the label to always show. So I'm simply going to type in the keyword yes here. This means that at the close of every bar, when this code executes, it's going to read, when should I show this label? And it's going to say yes. Always it will say yes, vis-a-vis the label will never go away. On to the second parameter, which is of text. I'm going to separate my parameters using a comma. Now, text, of course, meaning what would you like the label to show, right? We want to see, of course, the opening price of the candle, but we're going to build later labels for all 4 data points provided to us by a stock candle. Those 4 are open, close, high, and low. And luckily for us within ThinkorSwim, there are constants that represent each of these values. If that makes no sense, just understand that all I need to do here to show the opening price of the current candle on this label is type in open. That will now show, of course, the opening price. Now, the third parameter of the add label function is of color. I want the color of this label right now to be light gray. But color is kind of funny in ThinkorSwim. I can't simply type in light gray because, as you can see, that throws an error. It throws an error because these color values are not stored natively within ThinkorSwim. Instead, they are stored in the color data type. So we need to reference these constants inside of the color data type by utilizing dot notation. Once again, if that makes no sense, just know that you have to type in color dot before you can reference any color within your ThinkScript coding. Now, if we go ahead and hit apply, you will see 605.92 shown up here in the top left, and the opening price of this current candle that we're looking at is in fact 605.92. Now, as some of you may have caught up on, there is still one more parameter within the add label function, that being of location. I just want to show you quickly, once again, back on the ThinkorSwim Learning Center page, that we aren't getting an error running this function right now because location has a default value. Actually, if you noticed, the red highlighted errors went away after we added visible and text. Color also has a default value. It's really just the parameters that don't have default values that must be included in order for the code and the function itself to not throw an error. Also, I'll just reference quickly that when utilizing the ThinkorSwim Learning Center to look up these functions, you can see, hey, this default value of color is color.red. This location, just like I mentioned we needed to utilize dot notation for colors, is also location dot top left. These location values, just like the color values, are not stored natively within ThinkorSwim. They are instead stored inside of the location data type. So once again, we're going to need to make use of dot notation in our own custom code. But for the location of this label, we are going to do something fun. Because of course, I'm going to end up adding multiple labels to this code by the time it's over. So I want to be able to have an input variable setting that I can change once and have the location of every label move together, rather than having to go through into the source code and change the code on each and every label if I want them to be in a different location. So what I'm going to do is at the top of my code, I am going to declare a variable using the keyword of input. I will name this variable location. Basically, all this means is this is going to be the name of the value in which I store inside of it, and we are going to input that location dot top left. This is, once again, this is the default value of the add label function. So now when I come down, separate my parameters by a comma, and I'm ready to call in now my location parameter for add label, instead of needing to type in location.topleft on every single label we add, I can simply type in the variable named location. This, of course, will not change anything on our current code because we have not moved it. But what this does, since we utilize that keyword of input to declare that variable, now if I click on the settings cog of our custom study, I have a drop-down menu of all of the values stored inside of the location data type. So I can simply click on top right here and apply this, and you'll notice the label moves now to the top right. If I want it on the bottom left, I can click that and apply it, and the label moved to the bottom left. And once again, the very important part to this is that once we add our 5, 6, however many labels we're going to add in this code, I will reference this location variable as the parameter for the location to every single one, so that when I change it from that settings cog, they all move together. Now, since you have a basic understanding of input parameters, we are also going to create another one for visibility, because maybe not everybody that creates this code wants to see every single one of the labels on every single one of the charts that they are looking at. They might want to choose to turn off some labels sometimes. So what we're going to do is we're going to input another variable. I will name this one show open, and I will set this value to yes end my line of code with a semicolon. Now, for our first parameter of the add label function, remember, which is visible, we are going to remove the hard-coded yes, and we will instead reference the previously defined variable named show open. What this is going to do is once again going to add another dropdown to the settings cog of this study, and I can now select the Boolean value of no rather than yes, and it will get rid of that label. We will make an input variable just like this for every single label that we make moving forward, once again, so that the user can decide which labels they would like to see very easily. And we're still not done with this label. Don't worry, we're not going to take this long on every label moving forward. I'm using this first label really to teach you everything you need to know so that as we're having the conversations about the next labels, you will understand what's going on. I won't have to teach you this for every single label. What I'm going to do for the second parameter of text, I want to clean it up. Right now, and as we begin to add more labels, you won't know what this number represents unless there are words there to tell you, right? So to show a string or to show words on a label, or really on anything within ThinkorSwim or most coding languages, you need to wrap them in parentheses. No, sorry, you need to wrap them in quotation marks. I'm better at talking about coding than I am English symbols. Quotation mark, and here I'm going to type in open, and I'm going to type in a colon, and I'm going to type space, $, and then I'm going to wrap this, close the quotation marks. Now, I want to also, of course, show the actual open value, the 60592 that we're currently showing. To do that, you're going to append it onto your text using plus. So now we have two different data types. We have a string and we have a constant, and those are appended together so that the machine understands that there are two different data types using the plus symbol. Now, as I hit apply, if I did that correctly, you should see open colon, and you now have the nice sort of $sign reference in front of that number as well. Once again, as we add 5 or 6 labels continuing in this code, you're going to need this to understand what each of the values are representing. One more thing with this opening price label, then I promise we're going to quickly pump through all of the other labels that we're going to cover in today's video. I want to quickly be able to open a chart and know whether today's open is above or below yesterday's open. We can make use of the color parameter of the add label function to do that. And in order to do that, we are going to make use of a logical statement called if. The if statement goes as follows. So let's do if open, this is today's open, is greater than or equal to the opening price of yesterday, and you use brackets and the number inside of the brackets to offset values in ThinkorSwim. So open bracket 1 close bracket is going to take the opening price from 1 bar ago. So if statement, then if this statement is true, I want the color to be light green. Else, if this statement isn't true, then I want the color to be light red. As I hit apply, we can now see, since we're looking at this SPY chart here and the current candle opened above the previous, we have changed the color of this label to light green. And I hopped quickly into the 5-minute chart. 1, to let you know that these labels will work on any time frame, and 2, to show you since this 5-minute candle opened below the opening price of the previous candle, our label is now light red. A couple of things quickly before we move on to the next labels. 1, I've already added this code to my website, daytradingstrategies.net. If you're interested in just simply easily importing this code along with over 90 others, click on our codes, click into ThinkorSwim, go navigate, and find the code. Next, there are literally just shy of 500 of you. I think last I checked was 496 of you are signed up to the codes. First off, that's freaking amazing. Thank you. And today, I've made a major change to the website so that everybody that signed up to the codes also now has free access to chapter 1 of my How to Code in ThinkorSwim course. So obviously, if you're already signed up to the codes, please go take this chapter. You're going to learn basic coding terminology and concepts. So a lot of the stuff I'm sort of spouting off in today's video, you will get real definitions for, and you're even going to write your first ThinkScript code. Every section comes with both a video lesson and a text lesson. And this is, of course, a very teachy how to code type of video. So if by the end of this video you find yourself interested in this sort of stuff, then why not check out the price of the full course? You get 10 chapters, 36 sections. As mentioned, every section comes with a video and a text lesson. Just a ton of value in there that you're really not going to find anywhere else for this cheap within this niche. Daytradingstrategies.net, link in the description down below. All right, so let's get on our horse now. Let's start making these next few labels a little bit faster. The next label that I want to make is for the closing price of the current candle. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to preemptively create an input variable named show close, set that equal to yes. Then I will come down and we will call in another add label function. The first parameter, remember, being a visible, we will now reference that show close variable we just created. Open quotation marks, close, colon, space, $, close quotation marks, plus, and this is where we now reference the closing price of the current candle by calling in the constant of close. And we're going to, once again, if close is greater than or equal to the closing price of yesterday, then for the third parameter here, we want the color to be light green, else we want the color to be light red underscore red, and then separate by comma. The fourth and final parameter, remember, being of location. And remember, for every single label we do for this final parameter, we are simply going to reference in that location variable that we typed before. So now if I hit apply, we should see the closing price. And funny thing about closing price in ThinkorSwim, as you will see, this is moving. It doesn't actually necessarily represent the closing price of the current candle. If the current candle is open, what this will actually represent is also the current price. So something to keep in mind with that. The next value I want to label for is for the high value of the candle. So once again, let's do an input parameter of show high, set it equal to yes, end our line of code with a semicolon, add in another add label function, reference that show high variable as our first variable. Then for the text, quotation marks, high, colon, space, $, colon, plus high. Now moving on to the third parameter being color. Now for high, I don't really care if it's like above yesterday's high. That doesn't seem like vital information to me. Of course, if you want it to be, you are watching this video, you now know how to set this up. Feel free to set it up that way again if you want to. But for me, I'm not going to use an if logical statement here. I'm simply going to set the color. Oops, I forgot about my dot notation. I'm simply going to set my color to color.light gray. Then, of course, our fourth and final parameter being of location, reference in that location variable, close our parentheses for the add label function, end our line of code with a semicolon. And to sort of round out our 4 basic data types of a candlestick, don't worry, there are still 4 more labels we're going to add after this that are more interesting and a little bit more complicated to build, so stick around. But of course, we are going to look at the low value. So let's create a variable of show low, set it equal to yes. Let's go ahead and create another add label function, reference that show low variable. Let's go ahead and type in low, colon, space, $, close quotation, plus low. And once again, for the color, I'm simply going to set this one to color.light gray, not going to use the if conditional formatting, and the fourth and final parameter being of location. As I hit apply, we should now see our 4 data points properly labeled on our chart. And remember, each and every one now has an input parameter. So if I don't care about seeing the high value, I can switch that to no. and you'll notice that goes away. Oh, and of course, also coming back into the settings cog here, let me now show you the point of using that location variable. If I switch my location to top right, you'll notice all of the labels now move together to the top right. If we select bottom left again, you'll notice all of the labels move together to the bottom left. I'm not having to come into the source code and change the location on every single one. Nope, they all move together with this simple parameter change inside of the settings of my custom study. Now we're going to go ahead and start building the more fun and more complicated labels. The next two labels we're going to build are going to be around percent change. I want to build one that shows us the percent change just of today's bar. So from today's open until today's close. And then I want to build a separate label that shows us the percent change based off of the difference from yesterday's close. So yesterday's close to today's close. Now, I don't actually want to build these percent change equations inside of my add label functions because that's going to become very messy and make the code very difficult to read and upkeep. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to, between my input variables and my add label functions, create two new variables that are going to be and store these percent change equations. The first one that we will create is total percent, and I'm going to do percent change. This will represent the percent change from yesterday's close, and I'm also going to build one for day change. This will represent just the percent change from today's open until the current price. Percent change equation is not necessarily complicated. It is new minus original divided by original, and then of course multiplied by 100 to make it the percent. So our new in both instances is going to be the current price, or what represented that in ThinkorSwim, the close of the current candle. So we're going to wrap our numerator in parentheses and we're going to do close, and for total percent change, remember this is the one where the original is going to be yesterday's close. So today's close minus the close offset by 1, once again utilizing those brackets, and we will close our parentheses here to wrap up our numerator. We're going to divide the whole numerator once again by that original, which is yesterday's close. I will then wrap this entire equation in a set of parentheses so we can go ahead and multiply it by 100, making it a percent. And very easily, the same exact equation for the day percent change, except that the original value is today's open rather than yesterday's close. So we're going to do two parentheses, close minus open, one parentheses divided by open, and add in that second set of closed parentheses multiplied by 100. That should be, if I've done it correctly, we'll see once we add the label, that should be our percent change on just the day itself. Now it's time to go ahead and actually add these labels and ensure that I performed these calculations correctly. Remember, the first step to adding our labels is by creating their input parameter. So let's create an input total percent change, set it equal to yes. Then let's create an input variable of day percent change, set it equal to yes, end our line of code with a semicolon. Then let's come down and begin adding new add label function. So add label, open parentheses, we are going to utilize first the total percent change variable as our visibility parameter. Then for the text, let's go ahead and do something like total percent change, colon space close quotation, plus, and now this is where we're going to reference the variable that we performed the calculation within, plus total perc change. And actually for this one, I'm going to do a second plus, and once again in quotations, just put that parenthesis sign just to make it look a little bit nicer. Now the third parameter, of course, being color, we are once again going to utilize the if conditional formatting. If the total percent change is greater than 0, then let's be green, else let's be red. So if total perk change is greater than or equal to 0, then, and let me make sure you all can see this, my head's about to be in the way, I'm sorry, then we want the color to be light green, else we want the color to be light red. And remember, our fourth and final parameter of the add label function is, of course, our location, and we're going to reference our location variable. Close our parentheses, end our line of code with a semicolon. Let's go ahead and hit apply, and we should now be able to look total percent change showing at 0.67%. And if you all can see it, it's a very small number, kind of part of the reasons why we're building these labels to make it very easy to read. It is showing 0.68% change on the day. And remember, that is referencing the percent change from yesterday's close to the current price. Now let's go ahead and build out the label for just the percent change of the candle itself, as that value is actually not shown to you anywhere natively by ThinkorSwim. For this one, let's not be like insane. We don't need to type all of this out again. I'm going to hover over this, hit Control C for copy, go down to the next line, hit Control V for paste. And really, we just need to change anywhere it says total to day. So our first parameter of visibility, change to day percent change. Let's go ahead and change the text as well to day. Let's change the variable we are referencing, the calculation we are referencing, to day percent change and day percent change. And once again, I want the rest of the sort of if statement set up the same way. I want the location the same way. The rest of it is exactly the same. Just needed to change a couple of things. And let's go ahead and hit apply on this. And right now we're seeing about 0.22%. If I can draw a line exactly from today's open to exactly the current price, I'm seeing about 0.22%. It might actually be a little bit easier to do on an intraday chart. Give me a little bit more real estate here. From today's open to the current price, we are seeing right about at that 0.21%. Of course, I have to go back to the daily now. That was showing us on a 5-minute candle, but now back on the daily, looks to be performing the calculation correctly. Now, the final two labels we're going to add, although our work's not going to be done, we still have a lot more cool customization we are going to do to the code, but the final two labels we're going to add are the highest high value over the last X number of bars back and the lowest low value over the X number of bars back. Because really, when you're doing price action analysis, that's sort of what you want to see. Like, okay, this is our recent high, this is our recent low, to help you determine entrances and risk rewards and stop losses and position sizes and all that stuff. Those are kind of the values you want to see. So let's go ahead and create labels for them. So of course, as always, when adding new labels inside of this code, we need to go ahead and create our visibility variable. So let's create an input variable named show highest, set it equal by default to yes, and create one called show lowest, if I can type, and set it equal to yes. But for this code, we're going to add a third input variable. I'm going to give the user the option to easily, from the settings of the study, change over how many days back they're looking at the highest high and the lowest low. So we're going to create another input variable. I'm going to name this one days, and by default, I'll set it equal to 10. So let's go ahead and start building out our add label functions. The first one, our visibility check, will be of the show highest input variable. And now we move on to our text parameter of this add label function. And for this one, it's a little fun because we want to make sure that the reader of the label knows over how many bars we are looking back before we even perform the calculation and give them the value, right? So in quotations, I'm going to write highest high in last space quotation plus days. We are now referencing our days variable here. This will show us plus 10 as long as that's what the variable is set to. And then we will do plus, and then in quotation space days, colon, space, close quotations. And now we have to perform our calculation. We have to, of course, actually give them the value of the highest high out of the last X number of days in the text as well. So plus, and here we are going to use the function named highest. So highest accepts two parameters, first being data, second being length. The data we want to check against in this instance is, of course, high. The second parameter is length, which, of course, we will reference our input variable of days. Third parameter being color. This one I'm not going to use any if statements. Let's once again just go color.light gray. And fourth and final parameter, of course, being of location, in which we will reference our location variable. If I hit apply on this, you now see what we just built. The highest high in the last 10 days, oh, you know what? Let's actually make this look slightly nicer. It's kind of a beauty of labels. You get to see right away what your code looks like. Let's put a little $sign on there too, just so it aligns with the rest of our values back here, or else that would drive me crazy. So the highest high in the last 10 days is 607.82. That's actually today's high. Today on this chart is the highest day out of the last 10 days. So that looks to be correct. Actually, let's come in and test that. So back here we were higher. So let's change this days to 50 instead of 10. First thing you'll notice that the text itself changes. The value should also change because it should jump back to one of these highs, but the text will also change the way we build it. Last 50 days, 609.07, which should probably be this high here, and indeed it is. Now let's go ahead and build out our final label. Once again, we have some more customization to do, but our final label will be of show lowest, and this time we are going to look at the lowest low in the last plus days plus open quotation, so that it reads days : $, end quotation, plus obviously this time instead of the lowest function we are going to reference the lowest function, and obviously instead of looking at the high data point we are going to look at the low data point over the last days variable. We're going to once again set our third parameter to color.light gray, and as always set our fourth parameter to location. If I go ahead and now hit apply again, let's actually change our thing back to 10 here. We should now see lowest low in the last 10 days, 575.35. I assume that should be this low, and indeed it is this low. So now instead of having to guess exactly where these sort of values are when attempting to perform your risk-reward calculations, you can see immediately right away. In saying that out loud, that actually kind of makes me want to add labels to this to show us the percent distance we are from the current closing price, from the highest high over the last X number of bars, and the lowest low over the last number of X bars. But we're already over 32 minutes into this video. I'm not going to do that. You all should actually have a pretty good idea of how to do that now yourself. Right? I have given you all percent change calculations. All you would need to do is utilize the current close as the new value, as we've been doing, and the highest high out of the last 10 and lowest low out of the last 10 as the original values. You build out those percent change calculators just like we did earlier, and you could add those labels yourself. Of course, if you need help, anyone subscribed to my website gets access to my personal email. So those of you subscribed, feel free to reach out to me. Those of you not, if you need help with this or any other type of coding, subscribe, reach out to me. I'll help you build stuff. We're going to build one more major customization into this code, and it's going to allow the user to offset this data by however many bars back they would like. Because a very common use case in price action analysis is like looking back at yesterday's close and maybe using that as an entry price if you're a gap fill trader, or a stop loss if you're a continuation trader. A lot of people like to reference those sort of things. Or maybe you're just looking back like 4 bars ago and you want to know exactly what the low was, etc., etc. Whatever your use case is, we're going to build the code for you. So actually at the very top of this code, I'm going to create a new input parameter. I'm going to name it days offset, and by default, I'll set it equal to 0. Now, remember earlier how I taught you that you can offset price action values in ThinkorSwim? You simply need to use these brackets, right? We used it when building the percent change from yesterday's close. Yesterday's close inside of brackets 1, right? So all we need to do is we need to copy this day's offset variable into brackets behind every reference to price action constants in our code. And very luckily for us, ThinkorSwim highlights price action constants in a different color from everything else. They highlight them, of course, in green. So everywhere you see green, open bracket, paste in day's offset, close bracket. Where we already have it offset by 1, you simply paste in day's offset and then put plus 1, right? So day's offset plus 1 will be the original for our total percent change calculation. And actually, let me go ahead and copy this whole bracket day's offset. Now, behind every price action, just paste that in. Bracket day's offset. Bracket day's offset. Oh, here we go. Here's some more down here. Bracket day's offset. This is going to get a little tedious, but there's actually, funnily enough, not too many references to the, oh, sorry, this one was a, I didn't even see it. This one was a plus 1er here that I am breaking ever so slightly. Days offset plus 1 being our calculation here. And then as we move on, close days offset, close days offset. This is another plus 1er, so let's try our best not to break it too much again. It is still broken. Give it a space. Aha, there's an extra bracket tray. And then we go down to high, days offset, low, days offset. Now, where I'm actually not going to do this is on the highest high and lowest low. I'm not going to start offsetting those values. Like, oh, now we have the highest high based on where we were trading 5 days ago instead of today. That, to me, sounds really confusing. If you want to do it, obviously easily enough, all you need to do, paste in the day's offset as we've been doing for these values. I just think that's confusing, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, let's go ahead and hit apply and apply. And of course, right now, you'll notice nothing change. But if I come into my cog here and I change the day's offset to 1, you will watch all of these values change. At least they should. So now, open 600.67. That should be yesterday's open. It is indeed. Close 603.05. Yes, high 603.06. Yes, low 598.67. Yes, the percent change being, and this is actually nice, you can see like, hey, how much did the market go up yesterday? The market yesterday went up 90, or not 92%, holy crap, 0.92%, and intraday 0.39%. So those are actually fun statistics you can now use this offset to look at, right? And of course, I think like that's going to be the most common use case of this is looking at yesterday. But if I want to look at like 3 days back, I can go ahead and do that. And we are now, of course, looking at this red day and getting the statistics from that. So we just went through a pretty in-depth tutorial of how to build very customizable labels. You should, at this point, really have a pretty solid understanding of how to add any types of labels utilizing any types of values that you would like. This was a very teachy video. Of course, if you enjoy my style of teaching, you get hours and hours of it with my course in which you will learn how to code everything from custom studies, strategies, scanners, more labels like we learned today, automated alerts, etc., etc. Check out the website, click on course if you're interested, or if you would just like to access this code along with over 90 others, you can click on our codes and sign up for that membership. Either way you decide to go, sign up today on daytradingstrategies.net, link in the description down below, and accelerate your trading journey. Unless you've been coding in ThinkorSwim for longer than me, you probably learned something today. That was a pretty in-depth tutorial. So if you did learn something, please take the half second, hit the like button. If you would like to continue learning, make sure you're subscribed to the channel down below. With all that being said, I'll catch you on the next one.